Thought I'd just start before I hand over to John. I just wanted to sort of, I know there's a few new faces on the call today, so I just wanted to spend a bit of time just to give you a feel for what the HE Hub is, what it's all about, and why we've put it together. Really, I mean, I've put this statement on the screen here, and essentially is we wanted to create a forum for our users in this sector to come to the board with particular themes that may be prevalent to yourselves, and just bring it to the forum so we could have open discussions around them. It's not meant to be an intensive 2-3 hour session. The whole point is a condensed sort of coffee sort of type exercise where we've got an hour. We'll bring up we'll address a theme. We'll get speakers on. So we've got John McCarthy today, but we might get someone from Microsoft in another session, or one of yourselves. If you're open to speaking about a particular theme, we can bring you in, talk about the theme, and then we can just discuss any challenges or any benefits, success stories, and just to get a better grasp really of particular themes that are prevalent in the sector at the moment. So going forward, the last session we had Andy Don at the University of Edinburgh, and he literally talked through the university's COVID-19 strategy and how they were going to deal with that, and that was quite a reactive theme, because obviously we were hit with that in early March, and obviously it put a hold on a lot of roadmap items and to focus on the pandemic. So that was quite a nice insight. So today we've got John McCarthy here, so I'll just go on to the next slide. John's agreed to go through the University of Salford case study. He will be touching on past experiences with CRM. I'm sure, as a lot of you have already said, that you've had experience with CRM, some for good, some for bad. So John will be touching on a bit of that, and then he'll be going through the pioneering project that he has run, and then obviously the journey that he's now gone through, and the rest of the team to get to where they are now, where they've got a platform for sort of exceptional student experiences. So on that note, John, if I hand over to you and you can share your screen, we can go through the presentation.
Okay, that's fine. Let me just find the...
Yeah, I'll just stop mine as well. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Sorry, 1 second. Sorry, just Here we go.
Perfect.
I'm hoping that's full screen for people.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Okay, right, let's sort of, without further delay, crack on. So just very quickly, a bit about me. I'm sure a couple of you will have no doubt had a quick look at the LinkedIn. I've been in the sector for over 30 years. I actually started out as a lecturer in information systems way back. I say I'm a bit of a data geek. That's probably an understatement. No, data for me drives absolutely everything. And certainly when I took up the role of head of student recruitment back in 1997, it was a very different approach to recruitment. That was at John Moores University. And as was the student recruitment marketing for me, yes, I love the creative stuff, but for me the creative stuff is what I'll call the froth on the cappuccino. And the data is about making sure you've got a decent quality cup of coffee underneath the froth on the cappuccino, because if you haven't got a decent coffee, it doesn't matter how much froth you have, you ain't got a good cappuccino. So that's sort of very much a bit of a mantra for me in terms of informing what we do and how we do. So data drives all of our decisions. I think I can claim to have been the very first person to have implemented a student-facing CRM or an applicant-facing CRM in the UK back in the year 2000. And it was a product at the time called eComs, and it had been brought to market by Hobson's, who had basically bought it off Cal Poly Institute in California. And that was put in at John Moores, and that was hugely radical at the time. But I think eComs and its successors certainly haven't kept pace with the general development in terms of CRM. And Salford is now my 5th university, so I've been pretty much around the Northwest, so including both pre and post 92. Quick bit about Salford. We're close on nearly 25,000 students now. We've grown quite a bit. I've been at the university now 5 years. And in those 5 years, you can see what we've done in terms of our undergraduate intake. And a lot of that comes back to the underlying data that we've got. Our applications haven't grown at that rate, but the conversion has. An awful lot of segmentation has gone on into what we've done. And we don't just segment by the traditional sort of types. which is by program, and those we segment by where applicants are coming from. We use Mosaic Lifestyle to basically influence content and to emphasize certain elements of the Salford offer. So again, that segmentation is really important, and having tools that can help us deliver that segmentation is important. And at the moment, it is a really challenging activity to do. A lot of the segmentation has to be done by hand, and a lot of the individual campaigns then need to be built individually, as opposed to having a lot of that automated campaign stuff. That growth over the last few years in terms of the UK students through UCAS has now made us the 12th largest recruiter. And we recruit more students from the UK than Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds and Newcastle. They're conscious that those four also have very significant international recruitment and much larger postgraduate recruitment than we do. And again, Salford, for those who don't know it, founded in 1896, got university title in 1967, so we're not a post-92, though I have to say our market is very much a post-92 market. We sit very much in that sort of the triangle of University Central Lancashire, Liverpool John Moores University and Manchester Met. That's very much our sort of our draw, but we have been growing our recruitment from out of region significantly, and again that's been very much data informed growth, looking at what's been happening with the 18-year-old population, where the challenges are, where the opportunities are. And you'll know that whilst this year is the absolute bottom of the demographic, the 18-year-old population does not regrow evenly across the UK, and that has basically informed some of our outreach work. So what about the CRM project itself? So this is our attempt number 5 in 7 years to put a CRM in. I joined the university in 2015, and this is now the 3rd attempt at trying to put in a CRM, and I would like to be able to say I think we are now making some success. The first one is I had approval pretty much as soon as I arrived for a new CRM. It was going to be a SITS portal based. 12 months into the project, we had a new CIO join the university. We were 6 weeks from go live, and basically he pulled the project, saying that it didn't fit with the new strategy, despite the fact we had invested very significantly time, resource, cash into it, and he won the argument. We then ended up in 2017-18 going out, and the CIO was very much of the approach that we wanted a development partner. We did the usual pitches, and the CIO also wanted a whole enterprise solution. My experience of whole enterprise solutions is I don't know of a single university that's managed a single whole enterprise solution, and my experience says you have to break it down into the constituent bits, but that we maybe can have a conversation about that towards the end. So we very much had an IT-led decision. It went against the vendor that the business areas wanted to work with, because they had a much more off-the-shelf offer, and we entered into a development partnership in the summer of 2018. This time last year, we basically hadn't seen a single deliverable. The project was absolutely being driven from the CIO and the IT service team. The business team, in my view, were not engaged in the project, but weren't even allowed, in my view, to be engaged in the project. And I think that was one of the reasons why we hadn't developed anything. We had nothing, absolutely nothing to show for a year's worth of business partnering at that time. So last summer, we took the view to reset the project because we hadn't delivered, and the project was broken down into different chunks. And the first chunk that we went with was the recruitment and admissions chunk, and that's the chunk that I've been working on, and I'll talk a bit more about, but I can also say where we're going to go next as well. Project sponsor was appointed from the business, and that was me, so I was accountable for the delivery of that project. And we set about very early on giving ourselves a target of what could we deliver by the end of November, in terms of something that would function. We knew it wouldn't be brilliant, but we could get some functionality out there, and we could show that we can actually deliver and get solutions on the ground. What I can say, and that was sprint 1, and we did deliver that by the end of November. We are now on sprint 13, and I'll share more of that journey with you as well as we go. So what's the vision for the project? Because there is a big vision for this project, and I loosely call it the angel cake. Unfortunately, the picture I'm about to build up doesn't quite match that, but if you think about the middle 3 bits, you'll see why I've called it the angel cake. Obviously, we've got our core underlying transaction processing system is Banner. So basically, we use Banner to then feed Dynamics, and then Dynamics basically becomes the vehicle within which we can have a much richer environment. We can add much more content. We can track all the engagements, all the stuff that you know, and that really does add value to the sort of transactional stuff that Banner can provide us with. In parallel to this, we've actually been developing out a new website. And the website is very much around we're actually moving to a content management system, which we didn't have before. So we've gone down the process of having Drupal is our CMS. And for me, it's a digital repository. It isn't just, oh, this is the website. The website happens to be one manifestation of the digital resources and the digital assets that we have. But we wish to use those digital resources and digital assets in different ways. And clearly the website is just one of those channels. One of the things we've also added to the website is Acquia Lift, and Acquia Lift enables us to do all sorts of clever stuff. We can track how basically students or anybody is interacting with our website, and it also means we can curate the content based on, I suppose, the personas that Acquia has identified based on past behaviours and performance. But we can also prescribe the sort of curation of content to the homepage based on IP address. So what that will do is give us an opportunity, say for example, for students from India, we can give them a personalised homepage based on where they're coming from, and that's really quite exciting. But the angel cake bit for me oops, sorry, there are. So it's the 3 layers in the middle that make up the angel cake. It's the dynamic stuff which is giving us the, I suppose if you like, the journey, the status, telling us where students are at and what needs to happen next. Drupal is in essence our digital repository for content, and we are, as part of the overall project, deploying Adobe Campaign basically as our campaign tool. We have got some click dimension stuff running at the moment, but the ultimate aim is that it will all run out of Adobe, because we think the tools are much more sophisticated than the ones that come out of the Microsoft stable. Though I'm conscious that they are constantly upgrading those, and I think there is a Microsoft marketing suite as well. But certainly Microsoft promotes Adobe as a partner. So that's the sort of that's how the angel cake, the 3 layers in the middle for me are going to look, and that's what's going to, that's the really exciting stuff. And Adobe Campaign for me is the sort of the magic bit in the middle that brings to life both the digital assets and the I guess the different stages of the student journey and the statuses of the students, and we build automated campaigns through Adobe based on how students have interacted with our content and so on. So what are the practicalities of the CRM? At the moment, we started off with over 7 different systems previously in operation. We had an on-premise access database, which had been written by a now retired academic, a guy called John Rabbit, and it's called the John Rabbit database. And it does basic calculations around things like discounts for international students, scholarships, and applies that sort of thing. But every year we require Dr. Rabbit to have to come and update the database with the new tuition fees each year and any changes to the criteria for awarding of scholarships. And it really is a risky thing for us. And he is not in the best of health and is now quite elderly. So there's absolutely a challenge for us there. We have an off-premise, I would say little supported system run by Object Next. That was a system that was put in very, very quickly, probably less than 2 years before I started. So we do have an application portal, but it is awful. We have no sight of part completed applications, for example. We only ever get the finished application coming out of that system. And we have huge integration problems with Banner as well. We have an off-premise self-managed CRM, which used to be Hobson's Connect. It's now Campus Management Solutions, or whatever they've now called themselves. And we use that for our home recruitment, both undergraduate and postgraduate. We have an off-premise managed service, which is used for international, and that's currently operated by QS, though that used to be the Hobson service as well, and they obviously broke that services up. We have some functionality delivered via for want of a better term, I couldn't find a better term, but a bastardized service desk system to manage certain elements of the recruitment and admissions journey. We have a bespoke off-premises hosted clearing system. Again, that's a variant of the Hobson's Connect. Web forms for non-standard, so single module applications. And then about 2 years ago, we needed to spin up an application form for degree apprenticeships. So we spun up a web form, and what that actually does is just generate an email, which is sent to admissions, and then the admissions team rekey it into Banner. Which is not ideal, and there are challenges, as I'm sure a number of you will know, with the data collection around degree apprenticeships, which does not fit with the standard model that I think SIT's Banner and any other standard student record system or traditional student record system doesn't have. So how have we got to where we've got to? And I'll share some of the features and stuff in a second. I think we've had a much clearer vision and drive. I suppose I've had the fortune that whilst I haven't line managed all of the teams, I've only been up until the 1st of July, only managed the marketing recruitment area. We have been able to garner the necessary resources from admissions and from the international team and from student administration, and the relationship with IT services is very, very different. It's very, very much around facilitating the development of what the business wants, as opposed to trying to drive it and frustrating the business to hell. So as I say, the priority in August last year was to establish what we could deliver by the end of November. It didn't necessarily have to be a minimum viable product, but we wanted to get something that could add some value and try and build some self-belief in the team that we could actually deliver product rather than vaporware. Because as I've already said, this was attempt number 5, and nobody really believed we could ever actually get anything that would ever work. We decided to try and follow the student life cycle. So we worked on the basis of what would give best value if it went live in November 2019, and therefore we looked at basically what's the next set of activities, and some of that clearly drives is around January activity and January intake. And so that helped us to sort of identify what the feature timeline might start to be. So we built it out from that point. We seconded a small number of staff onto the team. So there's basically 2.5 FTEs from the business areas full-time, and then supported by BAs, full-time project manager, applications development people, and of course Crimson as our supplier. But what we did with the team is just give them permission to drive and to deliver, not to have to come back to us and ask for stuff. Set some broad parameters. One of them was, for example, we said we want a single dynamic application form. So the application form would change based on how you've answered some of the questions, rather than having a sort of 17 different varieties. They worked out, I think there are 14 different types of student at a generic level, and started off building or wanting to build 14 different application forms. And obviously the overhead of trying to administer all of that is ridiculous. So we set some broad parameters. We want a single dynamic form, and that form has to be able to cope with all 14 different types. But what we mustn't do is ask for information that isn't needed for that particular student type. And I guess that's what most people would probably do. It seems to be a fairly common sense approach. So we had our first release in November. We had an applicant portal. We have an applicant portal. It is still only at the moment for submission only, so it's mono-directional, but it enabled us to do degree apprenticeships, international foundation year, and pre-sessional English. And we got it live, and I think we were 1 week late in terms of actual delivery against the schedule. And we then came back in January, and we reviewed that alpha release, and we made some pretty significant refinements in its look and feel. In November, when we went live with it and we looked at functionally, it worked, but actually it was clunky. It didn't look very pretty, but we took a decision to go live anyway and get it out there, and again give the business the confidence that we could do it. And then ever since then, we've worked in this very much of a pattern of design, build, and refine. And the sorts of things that we have done as we've gone through, working with user communities, and it's quite difficult, so we won't be able to read this, but basically for each release, as we've gone through, we've sought feedback from that release, we've also identified what the problem was, and then we've shown people how we've addressed some of the issues that they had come up with. So I think the one at the top, for example, that you can see there under that before column, it was basically just a great big long alpha list of, I think it was schools and colleges, or it may have been programs, and basically people had to scroll down the list to find what they wanted. We went live with that. We know it wasn't ideal, but then by the time we got to the Delta release, we were in the position where people were starting to do dynamic search bars based on the sort of, if you like, I guess, the natural word search that people would pick up. And so we've engaged the business by constantly going back and showing them that we've picked up what have other people said, what have students said, what have users said. This is what it was before. This is how we've improved it, and that's really kept momentum going. And I think it's kept people's peckers up a little bit, because they can see that feedback is important and it is being actioned, and it makes a difference. I think for for that sort of motivation and so on. So what about our feature timeline? I couldn't find the early one to get us up to April, but basically we built out a lot of the portal stuff. So since April, we built out now the international application and agent portal. There is some automated integration stuff with Banner. That's been a big piece of work. I can't remember what the integration platform is. It'll come back to me in a moment. But we do have an integration platform between Banner and CRM. So April, you can see, was very much focused on international, and again, part of that was about trying to follow that cycle. Working then in through things like event management, starting to put more information back into the portal for an applicant, moving then into sort of the PGT inquiries for the tail end of the 2020 cycle and UG 2021. Detailed offers and conditions being shown in the portal, both for the agent and the applicant. So the build of the agent portal was significant. It did take us longer than we had expected, and that's knocked some of this a little bit out as well. But very much the sort of sense of that agent portal was absolutely an essential part of the offer as well. So I'm not going to talk through all the other bits and pieces. I talked about the Adobe Campaign layer, and we actually kicked that off back in July. So we're now very much into, yes, we're cracking on with the CRM Dynamics build, but we've now got Adobe as part of that team as well. And the Adobe Campaign is being driven by the marketing team, and we've got resource dedicated to marketing who are driving that campaign, whilst admissions and recruitment continue to drive the other elements of the recruitment and admissions overall project. In terms of lessons learnt, I think the development of the actual software itself and the functions has probably gone faster than the business has adapted to those changes. So there is definitely an issue around business readiness, but we've deployed in anger, and in some cases the business has been trying to catch up with that. It's been owned by senior users, so not me as project sponsor, but senior users within the business who have been trusted and given a huge amount of autonomy. When things haven't gone wrong, we haven't bawled and shouted and tried to identify who's responsible and how did it go wrong. We just said, look, let's learn from it, let's move on, let's fix it. We've got a very tight, small project board of, I think it's 8, though it might actually be 7. So again, we've been able to make decisions really quickly. The project team have been, as they've gone into their 2 weekly or 3 weekly sprints, have been given the autonomy, and then if they've got issues, they basically escalate them to me as sponsor. We give them a steer and they crack on with it. I think as an organisation, we've struggled with the agile methodology. We've probably been used to the waterfall, everything, every I dotted, every T crossed before we go live. And we have gone live with some stuff, and we've had to do some fixes, but it's got stuff out there, it's got it on the ground. I think we still, and we've got a live example at the moment, and it may very well be that I might want to pick Elliot's brains very, very briefly at the end, but we've got an element at the moment where we want as much of this as possible to be out of the box or to be the vanilla. But of course, some of the business want to have this absolute desire to, what I'll say is to bespoke everything. We've got some of my colleagues are telling me why applicant interviews, for example, and how we manage those can't possibly be done in the same way that they're done at every other university. They can't possibly be done via a standard bolt-on to CRM. We've got to build our own interview whole sort of functionality, and we're pushing back and challenging on that at the moment. I think the other is communicate success, because although we moved really quickly and we got into those sprints, the team who were close to it really knew what was happening, and we celebrated with the team. We didn't celebrate out with the team. So a lot of the successes were not as visible as they should have been early on. I know sometimes there's a reluctance to shout about success for fear it gets shot down, but we didn't really start beating the drum within the university more broadly about the successes and where we were pretty much until June. And I guess some of that was we then had the confidence that we could deliver against a sprint. We were sizing sprints correctly. We knew what resource we had. We knew what pace we could deliver at. And I guess it gave us confidence that when we said we were going to do something in the next sprint or the next 2 sprints, we could actually do it. And one of the lessons, again, final lesson for me, is we did it, and the confidence in the team is huge. And that's not just the business, it's DIT, it's the sort of technical people, it's across the board. And even now, even at the Vice Chancellor's executive team that I sit on, the coup is now saying we now have, we can believe that we can actually deliver IT projects to time and on budget. And we are doing that with this project as well, that we may want to push it slightly. We probably want another couple of sprints. It was a 15-month project starting in August last year, run up to the end of October, and that's just for the recruitment and admissions bit, as I said at the top. So once we get that, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to enjoy a slice of the angel cake, and I'm going to savour it for a little while, because it will be a huge achievement, and I think it'll be an absolute step change in terms of our marketing capability, and the richness of the data and the interactions that it will bring back to us, and what it'll tell us about how the market is performing will be absolutely huge. And then obviously we want to learn from that. But what next? Well, next, you may have picked up right at the very head of the presentation and in Tom's slide, I have picked up the remit now. Our registrar retired at the end of last month, and I've now picked up the remit for the whole of student success, student administration and student support, in addition to the marketing and recruitment. So we will then move into the whole student life cycle. So hopefully we can keep that momentum going from the recruitment and admissions piece. And I'm excited by getting into the space of the predictive analytics, the automated business processing stuff, the AI, segmentation across the whole student journey. We've done it really well at the front end and the, if you like, student acquisition bit, but can we do more throughout the student journey to really enhance that retention? And I think we can. To do much more around that curating the student experience and what I'll call the nudge. So again, using things like dynamics to help us nudge students onto the next thing to do. So I'm not sure how we're doing for time. What's that, about 22? That's it from me. So contact details I think you've already seen anyway, but hopefully that's a bit of a quick run through, and I'll drop out of the presentation mode and open up the discussion.
Thank you for that, John. That's brilliant. Great timing as well. We're doing well. That's really insightful. Has anyone got any questions? I know there was very interesting what John just went through then, and probably a lot to take in, but I'm guessing there'll be some questions. So Alan's got a question by the looks of it. Over to you, Alan. I think you might be on mute. We've got you now, Alan.
Can you hear me? It's driving.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
It says, that's lucky, because it says mute is on, and that could be slightly embarrassing. Thankfully, I didn't swear. Mark, you'll note my good behaviour on this meeting, unlike others. Very quickly, John, that's really helpful, really interesting, because I've taken down a note of some of the lessons identified there. And some of the approaches. I'm really interested to know how you've done in nailing benefits realization. Given the sort of ongoing investment and time, how have you actually demonstrated to the business that it was worth the while?
Okay, so in the original document, one of the benefits realisation was a cash benefit of dropping one of the current providers. So the current Ascent 1 product that we have, that cost us about 130,000 a year. So we said straight away that is an absolute just straight cash benefit of the project. The other two licenses we need to repurpose the money. And then we put in a very modest student growth right at the very beginning of the project of about 1% per year in terms of both undergraduate and postgraduate. And over a 5-year project or a 5-year sort of planning window, that's what we used. Basically, it was growth in student numbers. I have to say that when we put the business plan together right the way back in 2017, we have already exceeded those student growth numbers in the business, but it was a combination of some real cash savings. We didn't quantify staff savings at the time. I think we're in a position now to start to understand what that might look like. But that's the next step. But there were no specific staff savings quantified. License savings were quantified, and then it's a growth in income.
So did your increase in student numbers, have you managed to attribute that directly in any way to that investment? Because that's always the tricky bit. I've tried it several times.
Not as yet. I think we will start to see the first benefit of that through international this year. We haven't deployed for undergraduate recruitment, and we won't deploy until we go into the 2021 admission cycle for undergraduate for next year. I think we will be able to demonstrate some early wins through things like the Applicant Portal this year. And the other is we did manage to find out from Ascent 1 what the abandonment rate had been of part completed application forms. And we were losing something of the order of 600 applicants a month because they were not being chased. So again, I think we would be able to go back and say we know we were losing this number of people previously. We've now got them in the system and we can push more of them through. We won't get all 600 a month through, but I think we'll be able to demonstrate that we're moving more through the recruitment funnel than we were before.
Thank you.
Mark, thank you. I think you've got your hand up also. So would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, John, great presentation. I'm kind of curious what you learnt about the overall application architecture, the systems architecture at Salford through this journey, and the other thing, if you learnt anything about the data model held in the system through this journey. What did you learn there?
Okay. I'm probably not the right person to talk about systems architecture. I haven't really got close to that. So I think I've got Nazrin, one of my colleagues, I think is on the call. So she may be able to say a bit more or may be able to follow that up. I think in terms of the data model, we very quickly realized that the underlying data model that we have within Banner is too limiting. And that was a big piece of work to identify what are the extra, in essence, extra bits of data that we want to append to the applicant record or to the inquiry record that we can't normally push through Banner, and how we manage some of that data, but also how we aggregate some of that data or disaggregate data that might be in Banner to give us a greater level of sort of, I suppose, finesse in CRM. So that's been a bit of a challenge. But we, again, quite early on, we were able to, I guess, build out some of the requirements from the stuff that we're currently doing with Connect in terms of inquiry and recruitment. But yeah, Banner has been a major challenge for us because it is a student record system and it doesn't hold the sort of data that we want to hold. It also creates problems with things like document upload and document management, that we can't do that within Banner. And obviously that's critical for certain applicant groups as well. I don't know if that answers the question, but I've tried to answer
the question. Thank you.
Nazrin, do you want to say something? I think Nazrin is on the call. Whether Nazrin can say a bit more or put you in touch with the people who can advise a bit more on the technical architecture?
Yeah, definitely. We've learnt loads, Mark. That's the answer to the question, both around systems architecture and the data model. With systems architecture, we started out with a principle of reuse by build. And within our organisation, we've got over 60, if not more than that, legacy applications which have been built in-house. So architecturally, we're looking at decommissioning as many of these systems as possible and moving them to strategic platforms. So when John was talking about dynamics and low code, no code, we've also got ServiceNow. So we're looking at how many applications we could feasibly decommission over the next 3 years and move over to the strategic platforms. But Mark, no problem picking up this conversation offline outside of this webinar, and I can talk to you a little bit more about that, both in terms of our strategy and progress, but also put you in touch with some of my architecture colleagues. I'm actually from IT, so I look after the change element within IT. So I'm digital delivery, but we've got digital design as well, and they'll be able to answer some of your questions.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for that, Nazrin. Elliot, see you've got your hand up. Everyone's so polite. This is brilliant.
Everyone's utilising the functionality.
I was going to say, it's going well.
I need to jump off at 10 to, so I just thought I'd quickly ask John a question, if that's all right. John, you mentioned about some of the challenges you're facing around out-of-the-box functionality versus customization, and almost convincing the business that your processes need to transform to work with the system and not the other way around. Unsurprisingly, I expect we hear that all of the time, and it was music to my ears to hear that you are going down that route as opposed to configuring the system or customizing the system to work for those processes. I was just wondering if you've got any, I guess, any immediate learnings on how you best do that. So less on the technology side, more on the cultural change of people that have been in these roles for 20, 30 years, and how, this system is coming in and potentially changing that.
I think the simple answer has been we've had a very small project board, and we've been able to make those decisions and make those calls and issue those instructions. And if people have pushed back, then we have gone back and said, no, that is not what we have required you to do. I'm conscious, and I've got some very good colleagues who work at Edinburgh as well, and I know that the decision making in some institutions is absolutely horrendous because everybody feels they've got to be involved. We've been fortunate that we've been able to keep this project really, really tight, driven by the business. I guess somebody who's got an enthusiasm and an interest and a passion for what we're doing, me, and I will challenge the status quo. And sometimes you have to push hard. Sometimes you don't have to push so hard. But actually what we've seen is perhaps people have been reluctant to start with, and then when they've started to see the benefit, it snowballs. And I think people then have realised the benefit of this sort of overly bespoking everything we do, and saying, well, just redesign the processes, let's make it simpler. But I think universities are places where we have had systems for 30, 40 years and we keep on adding bits to them, and people really struggle with going back to first principles.
Yeah, for sure. No, thanks, John. Keisha, I need to jump off, but yeah, thanks so much for organising today. And if it would be helpful, I'm very happy for you to share my email address with people in case they want to follow up directly with me. So thanks so much, and we'll have a nice afternoon. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Nathan, I can see you've got your hand up.
Yes, I know Elliot's just left, but I was going to say, I think, going back to John's point there, when Elliot was asking about, I think, keep managing helping to manage certain people in the business that might be adverse to change. I do think, John mentioned a couple of times, and I've had this conversation with both John and Nazrin before. I do actually think the university, the team, are in a really good space. I mean, John, some of the things you picked up about, confidence is high, etc. But I think in part, a lot of that's down to the behaviour and the culture that you've been able to create now within the team in the university and the teams, where you've said it before. I've always been cautious when people say it's all right to fail, but it's actually quite nice when people say if you're going to fail fast, but learn from it quickly as well. And you have got, it's been tough, but you have got that agile operation now working between the business and IT. And actually, people knowing that they can have a go at something, you can keep it simple, have a go, and then learn from it quickly and improve. You know, you've used those words. I think that has got a massive part to play in how you're driving change. You know, don't get me wrong, IT's helping that, but it's actually, you are driving the change within the organisation. And I thought it was really good. I hadn't seen the slides before. You know, we talked about them. The fact that you've got the user communities, and you're not just engaging with your external customer, which the students, to get feedback around the process and that's working, but you're actually engaging the internal customer, the users, and getting that feedback back as well. It's really good. I in part think that's helping to drive success for you as well. I don't know if you agree on that, but I think that's in part what has changed the culture and the behaviour.
Thank you, Nate. We've just got another question from Bruce at the University of Birmingham.
Yeah, thank you, John. It's nice to hear sort of people talking about a product agile approach, product-based approach, and how that's adding value as just been discussing. I guess, Mike, I'd be interested in knowing a little bit, but you talked about the challenges about agile. I'd be interested to know a little bit more about that, but probably a bit more of a technical question is more in front of my mind is about how you integrated the CRM and Dynamics with Banner. I know that that would be something that I'd be really interested in understanding what challenges you had in that area.
Yeah. Nazrin, I can't remember the name of the product. It is a Microsoft, is it Azure? Does that make sense? Does that sound right?
It is Azure, yeah. So that's the platform that we've used because we're pretty much Microsoft through and through with the way that we're moving and transitioning to our strategic platforms. As I said, we've got ServiceNow as well, but yeah, Microsoft. So yes, it is through Azure, and we've learned a lot. I'd say what we've learned is because I lead on change, development and testing come under me, as do program and project management, business readiness, and the BA team as well. What we've learned is how we need to work together in a seamless way with our colleagues in operations, infrastructure, networking, etc. environments, and the whole sort of premise within IT. It's been built on a plan, build, and run. And that's the way that plan, build, run, enable. So we've got strategy, design, delivery, and then service. But the way that we've set up John's CRM recruitment and admissions project with the co-located self-organising team, we've never done that before. It's completely new to the university. And as John said, business ownership, business led, very much business driven. That's been a learning for us as well. And going back to your question about agile, it's been painful. It has been very, very painful because in the organisation, there's a number of colleagues that like predictability, which is normal. It's not just unique to HE this, it's normal across many organisations. And moving from a culture of predictability to ambiguity, learning as you go, failing fast, all of that has been tough. But it's been remarkable to see the change in our colleagues and IT as well. Some of my IT colleagues have struggled with it, but it's been remarkable to see that shift. And it's a mindset shift. It's not just about the technology, it's all about changing people's mindset and being able to see that after each sprint, there's value that you're delivering, and that value is pretty much consistent. You can see it, and you're not waiting till the end of the project, waiting 12 months before you see any benefit that's directly delivered, whether that's to our colleagues within the university or to students.
I think the other thing, Bruce, is to say that the data integration piece has been down to a couple of superstars who have just been given, I suppose, what was the technical challenge? They're technically minded people. They absolutely understand, what goes on under the hood, or if they don't understand, they want to get the hood up and they want to go and mess about in the engine and understand how all the bits work. And we've just set them the challenge. We haven't worried whether as Nazrin says, this sort of self-organising team, we haven't worried whether they're in DIT or whether they're in student admin, because actually it's required somebody from both parts. And they are quite geeky in one sense, quite technical. And we've just given them permission to say, go away and just try and try things, prototype, test, pull things to bits. And not necessarily within a traditional sort of project management structure. So what have you delivered this week? What are you going to deliver next week? Actually, we may just have to let you go and play with it for a few weeks and understand it and try things. And there's been quite a bit of trial and error. They've brought in resource as and when. I think, again, we brought in support from Microsoft as and when we've needed it. But those people who absolutely understand the under the hood, the data, have absolutely come to life. They've almost got a new lease of life now, because the stuff that they're passionate about has been recognised. And it's been recognised how important that level of detail is in terms of ultimately delivering the CRM. And I think because we've sort of shone a light where the light doesn't normally shine, and we've given them the recognition that they deserve, because they are quite often the unsung heroes, they have absolutely risen to the challenge without any qualms at all.
Yeah, we didn't have the, where we did struggle, going back to Bruce's question, where we did struggle was the capability and the skills, because we had to, we were relying on contract resource for a long time, which is not sustainable. And then when you lose contractors, all that knowledge you lose as well. So what we did was we created senior developer roles within my team. So we've got one person who is very much Azure through and through. And then what we've done is looked at how we mitigate the single point of failure by doing knowledge transfer, knowledge sharing, etc. We do have a, don't get me wrong, we do have a contractor who is our Azure contractor who will be leaving us shortly. But what we've managed to do is transition that skill in-house so that we're mitigating that risk of everything falling on one person's shoulders. So yeah, there's been some learnings around how you spin up that internal capability and make it sustainable as well.
Thank you, everyone. Just conscious of time and that we might be running over into other people's next meetings. But thank you for the questions, and thank you to John. That was really brilliant. If you have got any other questions, then please feel free to get in touch. John, someone has put in the chat about if you're happy to share any of the slides that you've presented.
Yes, if I send them to you, Keisha, can you happy to send them around?
Yeah, perfect, I will do. And as we've recorded this, we'll also be putting the video online so you can rewatch it or share it with your team or whatever you want to do with it. But that's the purpose of it, and having it recorded so you can go back to it if you like. Tom, over to you.
Yeah, just to follow on from what Kay said, we have set up a Microsoft Teams group for the HE Hub going forward, so we'll save the recording in there as well. And actually, just thinking that might be a good spot to put your slides, John. Anyway, so if you send them over, we'll put them in there, and then we'll invite everyone. I mean, a few of you, I know you're already part of the group, but if you're not, there's a, you can utilize that group to see the recording and any collateral assigned to that. Again, just really conscious of time, but I just wanted to just sort of leave you with, really, if there's anything that that resonates with you that John's touched on, or if you're going through a similar journey, if you're going through an enterprise, or I know a number of you have said that you had CRM project plans and you've put them on hold due to COVID. If you need any assistance with any sort of just around our framework services or any workshops or just conversations about any CRM relevant topics, that we are here to help. So I've put up my details on the screen, and we've also got Lou on the call, who's head of our recruitment side of the business, and she's got her contact details there for anything that might be relevant for her as well. I don't know if you want to add anything, Lou, just before we finish on that.
Thanks, Tom. No, agreed. And obviously we work so closely together, and John gave some really fantastic insights there, and Nathan actually touched on it as well. But culture and that continuous service improvement and that ability to continually I suppose maximize on configuration and user experience and support, all of those are potential sort of outcomes of a lot of this work. So really happy to help share any RAG or market analysis on availability and capacity of skills in the Microsoft space, particularly because that's where we've got a lot of expertise delivering, but also reaching out to some of those more analytical profiles. Very happy to support with any MI or salary benchmarking as required, to obviously enhance and support you and your clients, Tom. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, John.
Yeah, big thanks, John. Oh, I think there's Nathan, have you got a question quickly, or is that an old?
No, that's an old hand.
Old hand, yeah.
Yeah, just want to say thank you to John and Nazarene and for everyone else for joining as well. It's been a good session. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
And thank you all for being so open, and hope to see you at the next one. We'll send you an invite to our next session.